is not far behind them.
Mics are on and close.
Wait, my book. I'm Galen. Nice to meet you. Hey, Jesse.
Next time it's a round of drinks. Next time it'll be a round of drinks.
Yes. Nice to see you, Cam.
How you doing?
Are you in Florida?
Mississippi.
Ah,
Whenever you're ready, Jesse, we can call it to order.
okay. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to open the Public Works Committee meeting for Wednesday, February 26, 2025 at 5 p.m. Do we want to start with the roll call? No? Okay. All right. Well, with that, we will move to the agenda, starting with number 1, be open forum, seeing that we have nobody here in attendance. Take a motion to move from open forum.
Seeing that
No.
usually.
Okay. All right, so the second item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the November 27th, 2024 meeting. Do I have a motion? Make that motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. The third item on the agenda is to Chapter 28 onsite sewer ordinance changes. Steve?
Good afternoon. So I have presented some ordinance amendments for chapter 28 as it regards to sewer ordinance. This is mainly pertaining to, or these changes are pertaining to onsite systems for use of holding tanks. Currently, our ordinance requires under section 28-236 on page 27, conditional use permit, which will set conditions on the frequency of pumping and based on expected usage, record keeping and cessation of use if conditions are violated. I proposed some changes there, language to rely more heavily on the monitoring and disposal contract from the septic designer when they are designing and proposing to install a system for a holding tank system. So that would be the change in 28-236. Next section is on page 35, 28-298. Navigate to that real quick. As it pertains to operating permits. Currently, Nisswa has 5 types of systems that require an operating permit, such as systems with high strength waste, holding tanks being one of them, SSTS serving 3 or more connections, type 4 and type 5 SSTS, and SSTS that exceed a daily flow of 2,500 gallons per day. The state of Minnesota has a requirement that operating permits be required on type 4, type 5, and MSTS. MSTS being defined as those systems that use 5,000 gallons per day or more. And I have reviewed the state requirements and county requirements so that we don't become less restrictive as required by Minnesota rule for these systems and propose these following changes. My planning commission had reviewed these changes at the February 4th meeting and are providing a recommendation to city council that they approve. And we wanted to bring it in front of this body as it pertains to the sewer ordinance, as most of that is pertaining to this body, so.
Any feedback from the committee for open discussion on this item?
Now, is this just for new tanks going forward, or is this for existing?
So this would be for anything new going forward. As I understand it, our city has no operating permits in place. So basically retro and forward at this point.
Now, as far as retro for anything that's out there now, are people going to get hit with this and not know?
So this would be more of a lift of restrictions. Right now, all of these systems that are in the ground had an operating, or, not an operating, but a monitoring and disposal contract for each system as installed. So that's an agreement between the landowner and professional that's a maintainer or a servicer in the area, that when that tank gets full, that they are required to pump it. Operating permits are a little bit more stringent, such as receiving pumping records and maintaining those documents at the city level. You see type 4 and type 5 systems implemented more with high strength waste coming out of like commercial restaurants where they have a drain field. A lot of times they have to implement technology, maybe aerating units in the tank that kind of help treat and reduce the bioorganic demand, total suspended solids, and fats, oils, and greases in those systems, that by the time they actually hit the drain field, they are more of a residential waste strength. So
Quick question for you, Steve, on 28-236.
Yep.
So it mentions that holding tanks should only be used on lots existing prior to 1978. Is that from the state's language or is that ours?
So the language that's there without coloration, strike through, or underlining is pre-existing in a current ordinance. Those portions of that section that have been stricken through are those that are getting removed. The underlined are those that are being added. So the phrasing did say that holding tanks shall only be used on lots as a last resort on lots existing prior to 1978, and let's see. Interesting. So like basically that's prohibitive of newly created lots.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about systems that are beyond 40 years old at this point.
Right. Hmm.
I was just curious if that language was coming from the state or from our ordinance.
That's just from our current ordinance, so I didn't touch that part of language. But yeah, as it reads, it could be interpreted to say that shall only be used on as a last resort on lots existing prior to.
Yeah, I think the 1978 should be removed.
So maybe motioned
If it's
or
in the state
proposal to,
statute, it would have to stay.
right?
Kind of what I'm getting at.
So if we were to highlight and strike through proposed, perhaps the language starting at on lots existing prior to 1978 and a.
Yep.
So one thing to note for the committee, with the central sewer system in places where we're converting over from on sites like this, say like Hazelwood, we not too long ago put city sewer up there. We've given some people permission to use a holding tank for a period of time. And that was, we were waiting for that central sewer to be installed. So for instance, Turner Towing, well, now it's, I can't remember who bought Turner. But anyway, that particular business was using a holding tank. They haven't connected to the city sewer. As far as I know, they have 10 years to do that. So it's kind of outside of the on-site ordinance that we have in front of us. But it gets kind of confusing because they're going from an on-site into the central sewer system. So if it comes up, you know, if you hear somebody asking about that, well, why was this allowed? That's kind of why we're doing that.
And now newly created lots, if you're proposing to take a chunk of land and subdivide it in half, for example, you have to have a septic professional write up a site suitability form for a primary and an alternate site for a septic system. And that's basically for your drain field, not necessarily your tank, because your tank you can pretty much drop anywhere, but the drain field is more limited based on soils present on site. I suppose I certainly could bring this back to planning commission to adjust that language or just my planning commission is really only involved in this process as conditional use permits are heard by that body. So I guess their approval is to remove that language. We could probably bring this to council, adding in that notion of striking and clarifying so that it reads holding tanks shall only be used as a last resort. And a monitoring and disposal contract will be required,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, the only reason we would leave 1978 in there is if it's in the state statute.
Right. And if it's not in the state statute, then you have a gap between the time period of 1978 and when the state started requiring those site suitability forms. So, could we motion to have staff review that requirement, whether it's in statute, and then if not, move forward to city council? So,
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? So moved.
In the cafeteria.
Were there any other sections in here, Steve, that you wanted to?
those were the only two.
I guess I would just mention a recommendation to approve the changes to the ordinance as suggested by Steve, and make that recommendation to the city council that those changes be made. Somebody can. What's that? We did. Oh, I thought we were. Okay, we're good. My mistake.
And then when we get to the council, that's when the publish. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
We don't really make any decisions. We make recommendations, city council, just to help you
Different
Get
than P and
broken
Z.
in a little bit.
Okay. Agenda item number 4, any committee member concerns or questions / reports? No?
I do not.
How about yourself, Cam?
No, I'm good.
I have nothing on my end either.
Right.
So with that, looking ahead, anything, I guess, Tom, from your seat?
Right now, I don't have anything in particular. I'm just trying to think of what we're working on. So we're currently still working on the what was the 2025 road bond is now the 2026. So we had yesterday, we had a council retreat and we talked about that a little bit. The council is recommending and will vote on dropping, having a bicycle path on Upper Roy Lake Road as part of that bond. So we'll be moving forward with that. Seth is gonna finish up working on figuring out what we need to acquire for right of way, and then if whatever is wherever we need to get that, largely it's for drainage issues. They'll provide that information to Tom Pearson and we'll proceed to acquire the right of way that's needed, and then hopefully we'll be on track for that project to continue to move forward for 2026 construction. One other item we came out of that with, out of the retreat yesterday, is the next road bond, which we had been referring to as the 2026 road bond. It's now the 2027 road bond, which affects some areas downtown. Once we have ironed out right-of-way issues for the first road bond, that one will be jumping right in and starting to work on identifying right-of-way issues, potential right-of-way issues with that road bond, and hopefully start ironing those out yet this summer or going into the following winter so that we can be ready to go with 2027 construction.
And I think the consensus from all of us yesterday was to try to advocate going that prescription repair route. Would you agree?
Yes, so prescriptive easement, so the way that was described to the group yesterday, by Chad Connor with Woodseth is basically we're taking a roadway that's there, we're picking up the old, we're laying back down the same thing but new in most cases, so we're doing that, in most cases, we consider our prescriptive easement to be 66 feet of right of way. So that's generally, it's the width of the pavement plus about 10 feet on either side clearing for general maintenance and utilities. So that's largely everything we need to do will fit with inside that prescriptive easement on most of the roads that we're working on for next year. And so there, where there's a few minor exceptions, those we will actually secure right of way. And then the project can move forward, so. Right now it looks good, there shouldn't be much, there are a few places where a lot of the improvements that we're doing for next year are drainage related, and so it's spillways for that water to get off the road. There may be some things there that we have to clear up, but should be pretty minor, so.
Yeah, I mean, some of it is ditches, drainage. With the trail being gone, if that's the direction, it sure helps. That's 5 feet on either side that we can work with.
Should make that project quite a bit less expensive. so.
Yes.
I mean, in a lot of cases, the ditches, were the areas that were outside of the prescriptive rights. So,
I think that there was just so much lessons learned from the Gull Lake Trail project. Not just from the steering committee, but what Tom Pearson had to do on the condemnation side, and then the negotiations. Even just looking at that, what's the road yesterday that we're discussing?
Upper Roy Lake
Upper
Road.
Roy Lake Road, yeah. Of the amount of parcels that we would have to go through, I mean, we were thinking somewhere between 3 dozen to 40, 42 properties per parcels. And that's just one piece.
Yeah, we will have a little bit more work to do when we get to the next bond because there's so much of it downtown and
Right.
we'll be constructing things like sidewalks and other amenities that will require us to have more clear right of way, I think, so.
Yep. Which then goes hopefully hand in hand with the revised scope for the downtown master plan of, I think the clear direction from council yesterday was to take the initiative early on with WSN to get downtown Nisswa plotted properly.
plotted by
So,
right-of-way issues?
no,
No.
not specifically, but
So,
the survey.
so there'll be a survey done, yes.
Yeah.
Of
I mean,
downtown.
because looking at what you even have to work with in the first place, so. I mean, the whole notion of the downtown master plan initially was to, it was prompted by if we ever resurface anything in downtown Nisswa, we're peeling back the asphalt. Perhaps we peel back some of the sidewalk, all of the sidewalk on one side of Main Street, for example, and then you go down that route of what can we do while we have this exposed at this exact time? Well, how much of the sidewalks does the city actually own right now? Or versus the business owners. Then it went down talking with Steve and P and Z of these business owners, their building lines aren't even on the lot lines. It's not exactly drawn to point. So having that data be trued up and contracting you all to be able through a revised RFP of trying to get a clear roadmap of what we have to work with. You'll see that come out formally, but that was the direction yesterday of before we even get too far down the line, because with City Hall Street being inclusive of the 27 road bond, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's,
I'm getting that one.
yes, we have two streets on the 27 road bond that are downtown. That's
City Street.
City Hall
and
Street and Church Street.
Church Street, yeah.
Yeah, and there might be some other improvements. I think there was a little confusion with this, but related to the school. We'll need to talk about that a little further. There's crosswalks and things coming off of Church Street.
That's right.
So, but, yeah, and some of this survey work could be done as those streets are done. So for instance, a lot of the stuff on Main Street may not, we may do the survey work sooner rather than later, but it doesn't have to be done in time for the 27 road bond, but we would have to do those items that pertain to the 27 road bond.
Correct. Bill, anything else from you?
Pardon?
Is there anything from you that you'd like to add?
No,
So one more thing I should add, that we talked about yesterday was lift station 1 and lift station 12. So, Bill's provided, the city council with, a location of lift station 12 and what would be necessary for right of way to reconstruct lift station 1. So now what we'll be doing is he'll be working with the city attorney to give that a proper legal description for lift station 1. And then I'm assuming somewhere in the short term, we'll be coming to the city council looking for approval to go into negotiation to buy the necessary right of way for lift station 1 to begin with. I'm not sure what the direction will be for lift station 12 yet. That's a little bit less clear. We know Bill has a pretty good idea where lift station 12 will sit. What the council's plan is yet for that or timing, we still have, I think, a little work to do, so. But that'll probably be coming up not too much longer after. That's all I have.
We didn't talk about timeline of lift station 1, did we?
So what we have for a time, excuse me, for a timeline for lift station 1 is originally we were hoping to do construction this summer, 2025. Obviously that is not gonna work. So what we're aiming for right now is summer of 2026. And I think, just my rough feeling on it is that we will probably be talking about lift station 12 at roughly the same time in order to allow for any development to happen there, but we have to work out, the council has to work out what kind of development they're looking for and what that means for the type of size.
And that ended as a very open discussion, I think, with a
It
lot of
did.
tweaking still needing to be done there.
But at least you know
Differing
where the problem-
opinions on, from some council members to the mayor in regards to future vision of, because that piece of land there, granted owned by ETOC with the Schaefer's to the north of that, east side of 371 by lift station 12. There's been prohibitive restrictions, I think, intentionally placed by previous councils, like you alluded to yesterday, the previous fathers of the city to try to maintain whatever go through there. But there are some positions from council members of trying to loosen those restrictions to open up the inflow of the capital investments to have those developments, regardless of what they be, obviously per whatever the zone district may be. I think that one's gonna take a little bit more, probably a similar type of event that we had yesterday to really
Yeah,
get clear direction, because it looks like it's in the middle right now.
yeah, I would think that's almost gonna be a workshop onto itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, just when I was laying out or looking at 12 a little bit closer. It seemed like there was a lot of unknowns as far as like the grading of the site, like what is it gonna be used for, where's things gonna be placed in order to come up with, fine tuning, I guess, where lift station 12 goes and the elevations and stuff.
They're saying like 35 feet deep.
Could be. Trying to make it shallow. We can make it shallower. I think we can, but there's like I said, a few unknowns that we knew a little bit more as to how they're going to develop it. We could probably change that.
Yeah, I saw my first potential rendering of what that could look like yesterday, the plot that you had,
Oh,
the general arrangement.
yeah,
There's opportunity, but it's really gonna be stringent on what type of product Grandview or ETOC is gonna be
Right.
moving forward with there. Which seemed like Councilmember Hall had some good insight as to what that was going to be, trying to get a meeting put forward with that team so that information can be relayed to us.
Yeah.
Then the committees would be helpful. So
Yep.
hopefully that's followed through on. Tom, is there anything that you'd like to
No.
Ed?
no, Sorry, I missed. Sorry.
I was late as well, so if I'm fired, you're fired. If you're fired, I'm fired, I guess.
Nobody gets out that easy.
Yeah, I know. Okay, well, for reference, our next regularly scheduled meeting is on March 26, 2025 at 5 p.m. Central. Unless anybody has any closing commentary, we can, make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, God. bless.
Just one quick thing to mention with that, so, that meeting will be tentative, right now, there's not business that would have to come in front of this committee, but if something comes up, I will send out notices like I did for this one, and we'll schedule a meeting, otherwise, that should be the date, if we have one, so.
Is the rest of the committee comfortable with that? Tentative meetings? I'm sure you won't be complaining in the summer months.
Does that include your proposed street improvement program for what's coming up?
So some of that stuff, the council is working on that more directly. So we had a workshop yesterday. I don't know if you were aware of that, Tom. They had a retreat actually at the community center, and they dealt with a lot of the issues related to the 26 road bond. So if there's business that the council kicks back to this committee to iron through, then we'll have something to work through. But I think a lot of the road bond stuff that I'm aware of right now will be worked out in workshops with the city council. So we'll be working on probably for the short term that I know of, more minor issues such as this ordinance revision that we looked at today.
Is there a particular reason they circumvented this committee to do that?
Some of that was at my recommendation. I was hoping to more thoroughly educate the city council on the issues and given the dollars that are at stake. So we've found that we're going through a lot of this stuff here. We're making a recommendation and then they're re-going through it at a council meeting. So rather than do that, I thought a workshop would make more sense with some of these larger projects. And so that's kind of why we're working on it that way. It's not to say that there's anything wrong with the committee, or even the council. I just thought it was more efficient to go that way. And at least a couple of the council members agreed. So that's the direction we're going.
Thoughts on the matter?
And I'm not a fan of that at all. I thought that was kind of the point of this committee.
Yeah, I agree with Galen there.
I mean, I get that the council wants to be more involved and they want to understand what we're doing, but they're more than welcome to show up here and I never see them here. So in my mind, if they want to have more information, there are seats there that they can sit down and they can ask questions at any point in time. But to go around this committee, to me, smacks of they have their own agenda and they want to circumvent this committee.
Well, I don't know, Galen, this is supposed to be an advisory committee. Okay, supposed to advise, go through it before it gets to the elected body. And I guess I'm a little bit surprised too, Tom, that, you're just gonna bypass and go straight to the city council.
I can understand that, I guess. I just feel like, we end up presenting a lot of this information twice. And it's regurgitating the same thing. And ultimately, they're this decision body. I wanted them to have a little more skin in the game, I guess. That's not to say that what you do here isn't important. There are times where that matters, and they may find that they would rather go back to this at some point. I think there was some issues with, like, for instance, the right of way where we were dealing with city attorney and the surveyor from Widseth. I think the city council wanted to know more about that. Now, maybe those workshops could be a joint session between the city council and this group. Maybe that's the way I should have handled that, but we can discuss that more, I guess. I can discuss that with the mayor and other members of the city council and see what they think.
Committees have vital roles, I think, in any city and any organization. Planning and zoning has been the committee that I've been on since, actually, I was on planning and zoning before I was appointed as a council member 3 years ago this month. I think the functions that they serve have a important purpose. I think that there's also a very different city council that we've had even when I was appointed 3 years ago. The engagement from that council 3 years ago versus the council that we have today, not to say that it was less then. It's just it's a different feel now. There's folks that are inquiring, I think, far more, and you make a great point. They can be here. I could have been here. And I own that as well. I think it's absolutely worth consideration to be able to have transparency across the board and to be able to get good feedback. So, I don't think that anything is trying to be done maliciously here to circumvent a specific board or committee, but I think there's opportunity for us to refine how communication is being passed up. Because there has been a lot of communication from the council that has been made even around or behind Tom or any various departments. We have some inquisitive minds that sit up here the third Tuesday of every month. So,
Yeah, I mean, certainly this is something that's evolving, so, you know, maybe this is the night where they would have those workshops, and then you guys could still still be advisors to them and make recommendations, so. And it won't be everything. I mean, there's still other things that we would do where this would be the right committee to make a recommendation. Yeah, there's been some reluctance to always accept recommendations, and it's not that the recommendation, there's anything wrong with the recommendation, but there's just so much information. And then when they hear it, they come to a different conclusion than our recommendation a lot of time, and it just gets frustrating to present this stuff over and over again and then have different results happen. From my end, that's how it has worked out, so.
No, I understand it, but isn't that the point of having the chairperson also be a member of the council?
Yeah, and I think it's gotten a little bit better. Our chairs have got a little stronger since Joe. So that helps a lot. I think Jesse will be that way too. We've had some chairs in the past who, when they get to the council, don't faithfully represent what we've talked about here in this group too. So it's made it difficult for me as the presenter to try to work through this stuff. So.
my background is in utility, power utility. That's why I always felt like I'd have a good opportunity to work with Tom and had to wait for a new mayor to be able to be positioned in that way. Sorry, Steve, as much as I enjoyed working with you and Bethany in the past, but P and Z is, I like building things. I don't like, your side of the house is a little sleepy sometimes. But with that being said, my commitment, my knowledge that I have, even for my age, it's still hopefully something that can still provide value. And it can be a well-rounded package being presented to the council, the third week every month. So not that it hasn't been before. I know that the council just recently for the 26 road bond went against your guys' recommendation. I was one that was on that vote to go against, and I'd be happy to provide my reasoning for anything as to why I go.
That's fine, that's
Yep.
fine. But, what I would hate to see, Jesse, is that, and for whatever reason, to streamline the process or whatever you want to call it, bypassing, a committee that's between, the staff and the city council. I'd hate to see that happen, because I think the input you get at this level is important, whether or not you take, the recommendations or whatever. it's still a step in the process. And I know there've been some contentious issues that have come up in the past where it's probably, lengthened out the, what you would have liked to have seen, time-wise and scope of project-wise. But, that's just one of the things about, city government is you have to go through the process.
That's right.
I can give a little bit of enlightenment there too, Tom, with what you just said, kind of jogged something with me. We would push some issues, like for instance, when we were working with recycling. We would work on that project here. We'd make a recommendation to the council, they'd get it up there. They wouldn't like something that we had recommended or whatever, and they'd kick it back, and we'd sit there and play this ping pong, but there was also pressure to get it done. And so, it's okay, if you want to get it done fast, then we can't do that. And so my idea was, let's do these things, some of these more controversial issues or expensive issues such as the road bonds as council workshops to try to cut through some of that. And, this is really the first time we've done that. So, is that advisable? Does that work? I don't know. We haven't tried it, so.
I think it's also worth reiterating what the purpose of yesterday's meeting was, the council retreat. It was not a retreat where we're having pina coladas. We're sitting in that community center for 8.5 hours going through every single, well, a majority of every department's punch list.
Mhm.
We're going through the heavy hitting items because it's an opportunity for us to spend at least more than a designated 5-minute window on a regular council meeting night to go through top to bottom items. And it started with the pickle factory. We rolled into then your section on the road bonds, going then into the succession planning for the chief of police. We only have those once a year. Actually, I think the last one, Kiki, we had was John's first year in 22. Well, not first year, but first year of a second term as mayor. So to say that we'll have one again, I think our mayor's ambitious and is going to want to try to put something on the calendar again. It is an open meeting. We did have some participants there for the downtown master plan piece. But again, full blown circumventing, also just noting like what the purpose of that meeting was. The more info that we have as council members, it helps. And just from my perspective, the more information I can gather, it helps. I go through all 55, 60, 65 pages of the consent calendar each time, and it's painful, probably painful for you guys to put it together. But I like to know why we're spending $10,000 or $11,000 a month to Minnesota Power. And I asked Tom the question, my first month as a council member, is like, our electric bill and then the stoplight. We pay for that. So again, I think that we keep this meeting going forward and evaluate things. I mean, across the board, opinions are valid. You guys are dedicating your time from your families and your personal lives anyway too, but everything's fluid, and it is a new council with this mayor. There's a lot of fresh ideas, I guess, the best way I can put it.
So one thing I'll say about the 2026 road bond right now is it's largely in the hands of the engineer and the city attorney.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot for us to do at this point. They're working on the right of way issues. So that's why when I said this meeting coming up in March, we may not have one. That'd be why.
Yep.
We won't have anything to present. So.
Understood.
I mean, unless you wanted to see where we were at. The only thing I could.
Yeah, I like to at least have enough information, enough material to go through that, we're having a meeting that's at least an hour long. I think for us to come for a meeting that's 15 or 20 minutes doesn't serve anybody very well. Unless it's really important, like in this case, Steve wanted to get the ordinance updated. So the only way we could do that was to have a recommendation, so.
In regards to that project, do you guys have a Gantt chart for a schedule to be able to provide some meat on the bone to be able to help forecast.
We
scheduled
did
meetings?
until the right of way issue. We had a chart in order to like yeah, like you said, a Gantt chart to figure out, like in order to bid it for 2025.
Mhm.
We had a chart like that. But when the right of way issues came up and that Gantt chart kind of basically became useless, but we could make another one in order to have it for the 2026.
Oh,
in
it's
order
just
to bid
shifted,
it.
it's just shifted to the right is all.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we have a schedule. It's just changed by months. Like when we stopped, we're still working on it. We're just not, it's not as quick a pace as it would have been had we been trying to do it for now.
All right, that's all I have.
Okay. With that, I can, take a motion for adjourning this meeting. Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
78 date is gonna be